In a stunning twist in the ongoing legal saga between actress Blake Lively and actor-director Justin Baldoni, the scheduled deposition of Lively, which was originally set for July 17-5, has now been formally delayed by 2 weeks following a new ruling handed down by the presiding judge. This development, which came late on July 16th, marks another pivotal moment in a case that has captivated both the legal world and the entertainment industry alike. According to multiple sources, the deposition will now take place on July 31st, giving both parties a brief reprieve to reassess their legal strategies and address outstanding procedural concerns. While the delay itself may seem minor in the grand scope of a case already loaded with complexity, its timing is significant, especially as it follows the judge's decision to dismiss a key component of Lively's civil rights lawsuit without prejudice. Specifically, the judge ruled to dismiss the part of the lawsuit that targeted J.E.D. Wallace, a Hollywood publicist associated with Street Relations Inc., whom Lively accused of being involved in a strategic defamation campaign against her orchestrated by Baldoni and his team. The judge's decision to dismiss that portion of the lawsuit on jurisdictional grounds rather than on its merits leaves the door open for Lively to refile the case in another venue, and in fact the ruling gives her until the end of the month, July 31, the same day as the rescheduled deposition, to decide whether or not she will pursue those allegations further. This timeline is not a coincidence. Rather, it reflects the interconnectedness of the many moving parts of this legal fight and underscores the delicate balance both sides are now navigating with the upcoming deposition and the possibility of refiling the Wallace claim converging on the same day. The tension is palpable. Lively, who has long been known for her carefully curated public persona, has remained mostly silent in the face of the accusations and counter-accusations that have defined this case. Her legal team, however, has been vocal, particularly in pushing for safeguards around the deposition process, citing concerns about privacy, public spectacle, and what they describe as the weaponization of the legal process against their client. Those concerns were validated by the judge, who granted Lively a protective order allowing her to choose the location of her deposition and mandating that the defense provide prior notice of attendees and technical requirements. The move came after a controversial suggestion by one of Baldoni's attorneys, who proposed that the deposition be held publicly at Madison Square Garden as a charity benefit, a suggestion that many observers and legal analysts alike viewed as both inappropriate and inflammatory. While Lively's team immediately objected to the proposal, the fact that it was even floated in a court filing became a flashpoint in the broader discourse about the celebrity and spectacle dimensions of this legal battle. The judge's protective order not only shut that idea down, but also signaled a broader concern about the tenor of the case and the potential for it to spiral further into public spectacle territory. With the deposition now delayed and the location secured, the stage is set for what many expect will be one of the most closely scrutinized legal interviews in recent Hollywood history. The underlying lawsuit itself remains complicated. Lively is suing Baldoni and previously Jed Wallace for what she alleges was a calculated campaign to discredit her after she raised internal concerns related to misconduct in a film project she was attached to with Baldoni at the time. Her complaint outlines a pattern of alleged retaliation, which she claims included coordinated media leaks, anonymous tip-offs, and what she describes as reputational assassination carried out through social media and entertainment news outlets. Wallace's alleged role in that campaign was central to the narrative presented in Lively's filing with her legal team, arguing that he served as a conduit for false and damaging information aimed at neutralizing her professionally and intimidating her into silence. However, with the dismissal of the claims against Wallace, the narrative arc of the case has shifted, and the emphasis now returns squarely to the dynamic between Lively and Baldoni, with a trial set for March 2026. The months leading up to it are expected to feature a series of contentious procedural maneuvers, expert witness depositions, and continued media scrutiny. Baldoni, for his part, has denied all allegations and until recently had pursued a countersuit against Lively alleging defamation and reputational harm, but that countersuit was dismissed by the court in June of 2025, with the judge citing insufficient evidence and a lack of standing. The dismissal marked a turning point in the case, handing Lively a procedural victory and adding new weight to her claims. While the legal community processed that development, the public reaction was more divided, with fans and observers taking sides in a social media discourse that continues to oscillate between advocacy, skepticism, and outright conspiracy theories. In recent weeks, the atmosphere around the case has grown even more volatile, with rumors swirling about potential witness tampering, leaked private communications, and behind-the-scenes pressure campaigns aimed at swaying public opinion. Though none of these claims have been independently verified, they add to the murky fog of a case already brimming with emotions, speculation, and legal brinksmanship. Against this backdrop, the 2-week delay of Lively's deposition may seem procedural, but in reality it is a strategic pivot that allows her legal team to reassess their posture, especially in light of the judge's ruling on Wallace. As the July 31st date approaches, all eyes will be on the confidential setting where Lively is expected to give her sworn testimony, likely within the secure confines of her attorney's office, far from the media glare but not beyond its reach for Baldoni. The upcoming deposition represents a crucial opportunity to gather statements under oath that could support his defense strategy for Lively. It is a moment of vulnerability and strength, the formal assertion of her truth in a legal setting that carries consequences for both her professional future.
The times where people ignore the red flags and say, let's just keep pushing, those are the times where you fail. The majority of things that we're buying are created by men.
And the line between legal action and public perception grows increasingly blurred. The decision to delay Blake Lively's deposition by 2 weeks did more than adjust a court calendar. It sent ripples through the legal community and Hollywood alike, reigniting discussions about witness protections, power dynamics, and the intersection of celebrity status with due process. While many legal observers initially viewed the postponement as a minor extension, the context surrounding it reveals a far more layered strategy, one that reflects both tactical recalibration and deep-seated concerns about the psychological and reputational toll this case is taking on everyone involved. The judge's recent rulings, including the dismissal of Jed Wallace and the granting of protective measures for Lively, suggest a judicial awareness of the unique intensity surrounding this lawsuit, not merely because it involves famous individuals, but because the implications of the claims and counterclaims could reverberate across the industry. The delay provides Lively and her attorneys an additional buffer, a necessary pause in what has become a relentless grind of legal preparation, media scrutiny, and online speculation behind closed doors. Sources close to both legal teams suggest that the postponement is being used to refine strategy, clarify evidentiary gaps, and prepare for what could be a marathon deposition session filled with emotionally charged questions and procedural
what they call in this world the unfair advantage of having what is an existing brand. So it's as if a company who's been successful goes and starts a different company in a different field. So it is very unfair that I can raise money easier through that. But it's also, I've learned so much about raising the right money. You want to go to investors who are invested. So their physical investment is worth so much.
Battlefield, and in doing so forced Lively's legal team to regroup, recalibrate, and perhaps most significantly reconsider how best to sustain the momentum of their broader claims. Lively's silence throughout the ordeal continues to serve as both shield and sword. While her legal team speaks through filings and court appearances, she herself has avoided public comment, choosing instead to present a composed exterior at charity events or on rare public outings. This silence has been interpreted in multiple ways by supporters. It is a sign of dignity, and focus by skeptics. It is a calculated PR tactic designed to control the optics without exposing vulnerabilities. Regardless of interpretation, the silence has contributed to an environment where speculation thrives. Every court ruling, every leaked filing, every social media post from someone even tangentially connected to the case becomes fuel for a fire that refuses to burn out. The media has followed suit, with coverage ranging from sober legal analysis to breathless tabloid speculation. One moment Blake is portrayed as a whistleblower standing against institutional abuse. The next, she is painted as a manipulative celebrity, playing the victim narrative to suppress criticism. The truth likely exists somewhere between these extremes, but in a public court of opinion shaped by headlines and hashtags, nuance often gets lost. Recent coverage of the judge's ruling regarding the deposition location, for example, illustrates this problem. Some outlets reported it as a major victory for Lively, framing it as a validation of her privacy concerns. Others downplayed it, suggesting it was a routine procedural accommodation that carried no broader significance. Even the rejected proposal to hold the deposition at Madison Square Garden, which was intended as a satirical suggestion according to Baldoni's team, became a flashpoint, sparking outrage online and further cementing the narrative that this case is less about law and more about leverage, spectacle, and public power plays. Meanwhile, the clock continues to tick toward July 31st, a date that now carries dual significance. It is the new deadline for Lively's deposition, and also the final day she has to refile her dismissed claims against Jed Wallace. In another jurisdiction, this dual deadline presents a strategic dilemma. Should she choose to refile she risks reigniting a branch of the case that the court has already cooled. Should she abstain, she may lose the opportunity to hold Wallace accountable for what she believes was a central role in the campaign against her. Either choice comes with consequences, both legal and emotional, and those close to her suggest she is weighing the decision carefully with counsel input and an eye toward long-term reputational rehabilitation. For Baldoni, the stakes are no less significant. Though he is no longer pursuing his countersuit, he remains the primary defendant in a case that has already affected his professional engagements, public image, and perhaps most critically his personal relationships, while his legal team maintains his innocence and frames the allegations as baseless and opportunistic. The mere existence of the lawsuit has created a cloud that no amount of PR countermeasures can fully disperse, even as new projects are announced and social media posts attempt to normalize his public presence. The specter of the upcoming trial remains looming and inescapable for both parties. This legal saga is no longer just about facts or evidence. It has become a battle over narrative control. Who gets to define the past? Who gets to speak their truth? And who ultimately pays the price for a feud that has spilled far beyond private disagreements and into the cultural bloodstream? As July progresses and legal briefs are filed behind the scenes, the emotional toll of the case becomes more visible. Insiders describe growing fatigue on both sides, with staff stretched thin, lawyers burned out from endless filings, and even friends and family members expressing concern about the long-term effects of the case's emotional gravity. Yet no one is walking away, not yet. At least too much is at stake: reputations, careers, future earning potential, and for some a sense of justice that remains elusive and contested. The next phase will be crucial. The deposition itself, a moment of formal confrontation between narrative and cross-examination, will serve not only as a procedural milestone but as a public referendum on credibility, character, and accountability. It is the first time Lively will be questioned under oath about the allegations she has made and the evidence she claims supports them. It is the first time Baldoni's legal team will have the opportunity to test her assertions in a structured environment with the weight of legal procedure behind their inquiries. For the public, the outcome of that deposition may not be immediately visible, as it will likely be sealed or selectively leaked, but for those involved it will be a turning point, a moment from which future filing strategies and perhaps settlements will inevitably flow. The pressure is mounting, the silence grows louder, and the sense of something inevitable approaching is now impossible to ignore as the legal standoff between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni continues to evolve. Part 3 of this unfolding story reveals a darker, more complex layer behind the procedural delays, courtroom rulings, and media narratives. What is now clear to everyone watching closely is that this case has grown far beyond its original legal frame. It has become a reflection of Hollywood's ongoing struggle with accountability, silence, influence, and the way power is exercised behind the scenes. The 2-week delay in Lively's deposition, initially viewed as a mere scheduling adjustment, has given rise to a new wave of legal recalibrations and emotional introspection, especially for Lively, whose legal team is now actively balancing the pressure of preparing for a critical deposition with the possibility of reopening her claims against Jed Wallace by the same date. The dual deadline of July 31st continues to loom like a guillotine, reminding all involved that decisions made now will shape the final arc of this deeply contentious legal drama behind closed doors. Her team is reportedly combing through digital communications, witness statements, and legal precedents, not only to brace for the deposition but also to build a fortified strategy for either refiling the Wallace complaint or letting that aspect of the case go entirely. Multiple legal analysts agree that this 2-week window is being used not only for logistical reasons but for deep strategic plotting in the chessboard that this litigation has now become. There is also a growing sense that Lively is preparing to use the deposition as a moment to reassert her version of the truth, not just to the court but to the court of public opinion. In recent years, we have seen a pattern in high-profile legal disputes where depositions, whether recorded or transcribed, become pivotal moments that shape the story going forward, especially when the parties involved are celebrities accustomed to controlling narratives with meticulous detail. Lively's silence until now has been one of her most powerful tools, but that silence is about to end. Under oath, she will be asked to explain timelines, relationships, internal communications, and motivations, all of which are crucial to understanding the heart of her complaint. Her attorneys are aware that any perceived inconsistencies or hesitations could be seized upon by the defense and potentially used in court or in the media to undermine her position, and yet there is also a growing belief that Lively may use this opportunity to reclaim agency over a story that has often felt like it was being told about her rather than by her. While this plays out, Justin Baldoni and his team are also in motion there. Focus has shifted entirely to defense mode, now that their countersuit has been dismissed in June, a loss that, although procedural, forced them to rethink how they plan to challenge the credibility of Lively's claims. His attorneys are likely to treat the deposition as a goldmine for information, attempting to find contradictions or expose exaggerations in her narrative. It is standard practice in high-stakes litigation. But in this case, every word, every pause, every recollection has the potential to either support or erode the broader narrative being constructed in parallel to these developments. Something else is happening, something subtler but no less significant. Hollywood itself is watching the case with a mix of apprehension, curiosity, and judgment, and not just from the sidelines. Several prominent voices in the industry have begun speaking out, either in defense of Lively's courage or to raise concerns about the implications of the lawsuit for future collaborations and reputational risk. James Brolin, a veteran actor with decades of experience, recently made headlines when he expressed cautious support for Baldoni, a move that many interpreted as a signal that loyalties in Hollywood remain as fractured as ever. While Brolin stopped short of endorsing any wrongdoing, his words were seen by some as a subtle shift in the power dynamic, one that could influence how others in the industry speak about or engage with the case. Behind the scenes, studios, producers, and talent agencies are reportedly growing nervous about the long-term ramifications of this legal battle, especially if the deposition and trial introduce new revelations or result in a decision that forces industry-wide changes to public relations practices, media handling, and how whistleblower-type allegations are dealt with within entertainment companies. No one wants to be on the wrong side of a cultural flashpoint, and yet no one wants to be caught in the crossfire either. This is especially true now that the Wallace component of the case has drawn more attention in its dismissal than it perhaps did in its filing. By dismissing the claim without prejudice, the court has left the door open for Lively to reintroduce a key figure into the case, but in a different legal setting. This not only extends the life of the litigation, but introduces a level of unpredictability that neither side seems eager to embrace. From a public relations standpoint, the case has reached a saturation point. Every move is documented, speculated upon, dissected, and social media users have taken sides, forming digital tribes that defend or attack based on half-truths. Headlines and the rare leaked document. Influencers, pundits, and former insiders have jumped in, feeding a steady stream of commentary that blurs the line between insight and entertainment. In this environment, the 2-week delay feels less like a break and more like a storm's quiet eye, a temporary stillness before a potentially explosive turning point. Emotionally, the toll is becoming visible. Those close to Lively say she is feeling the weight of the case more acutely than ever, not just the legal exposure, but the psychological pressure of having her personal and professional life scrutinized, debated, and occasionally ridiculed. For Baldoni, insiders suggest he is growing frustrated with the way the narrative has escaped his control and the limitations placed upon his public response by legal counsel. Both stars now exist in a suspended reality where every statement, every citing, even every red carpet decision is analyzed through the lens of this case. No matter what happens at the deposition on July 31st, it will be remembered as a defining moment, not just for the case but for the people involved and the industry watching. If Lively comes across as sincere, detailed, and resilient, it could inject new momentum into her broader claims. If she falters even slightly, it could provide the defense with leverage that might reshape settlement discussions or trial dynamics. And so the clock ticks with mounting pressure, minimal margin for error, and a growing sense that the story is about to change dramatically again. As July 31st draws closer, the case between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni begins to feel less like a dispute between two former collaborators and more like a referendum on the entire entertainment industry. The deposition, now scheduled for the end of the month, is no longer just about collecting sworn testimony. It has become a symbolic showdown, a moment in which the underlying tensions of fame, gender, legal accountability, and narrative control will converge in one carefully orchestrated setting. According to insiders, both legal teams are preparing for what they expect will be a grueling multi-hour session with questions spanning a wide range of topics, from initial production meetings to confidential communications to behind-the-scenes incidents that have until now remained mostly sealed from public view. The legal strategy for Lively centers around framing this deposition as a moment of truth, a space where she can calmly and systematically lay out her version of events without media filters or speculative headlines. Her team believes that the strength of her case lies not only in the documented facts but in the emotional consistency of her account. They are relying on her ability to come across as composed, knowledgeable, And resolute under pressure for Baldoni's lawyers, the approach is more forensic. Their objective is to press Lively on inconsistencies, identify contradictions, and introduce doubt into the record, not necessarily to disprove her entirely but to weaken the strength of her overall complaint so that if the case goes to trial in March 2026, they can argue that her claims are exaggerated or selectively remembered. It is a common strategy in high-profile civil cases, and yet in this situation, every detail carries magnified weight because of the public attention, the legal implications, and the potential for a cultural ripple effect. Meanwhile, the question of whether Lively will refile her complaint against Jed Wallace remains unresolved. The judge's dismissal was procedural, not final, and Lively has the legal right to bring the same claims in a different jurisdiction, a move her attorneys are reportedly considering carefully. On one hand, doing so would reintroduce a key character in her narrative, someone she believes played an instrumental role in the defamation campaign against her. On the other hand, refiling could prolong the legal battle, divide media focus, and complicate her primary case against Baldoni. Legal experts say the decision will come down to risk calculation, timing, and whether her team believes that the potential gains of refiling outweigh the toll of additional litigation for Lively. The Wallace claims are about principle, not just procedure. She has long maintained that the reputational damage she suffered was not accidental but orchestrated, and that figures like Wallace helped turn private disagreements into public condemnations. If her team moves forward with a refile, it could reshape the case once again, bringing in new witnesses, evidence, and legal arguments that might shift momentum ahead of trial. But if she lets the Wallace claims lapse, it could also be seen as a tactical concession, a decision to focus on the more winnable part of her case and avoid legal overreach. Either way, the day of the deposition marks a fork in the road, a point after which all future motions, strategies, and settlement discussions will be shaped by what is said or not said during those sworn hours behind closed doors outside the legal process. The cultural and social commentary surrounding the case continues to build as new figures weigh in. Some have compared Lively's fight to previous high-profile cases in Hollywood that centered on power imbalances and behind-the-scenes retaliation. Others argue that this case is different because it involves two individuals who each have strong public personas, media training, and access to legal firepower. Whatever the case may be, there is little doubt that this dispute has opened up uncomfortable conversations within the industry, especially about how disagreements are handled when one party is a woman accusing a male colleague of coordinated pushback. Those who support Lively believe she is holding the line against a culture of silence, manipulation, and punishment. Those who support Baldoni argue that he is being unfairly vilified based on unverified claims and shifting narratives. The truth, as always, is likely more complex and nuanced than either side would like to admit. And that complexity is part of what has made this case such a lightning rod. As the July 31st deposition approaches, studio heads, producers, and PR consultants are watching closely because they know that the ripple effects from this case could influence how future conflicts are managed in the public eye. Several companies have reportedly begun reviewing their own internal policies on harassment, PR, retaliation, and social media strategy, out of concern that what is revealed in this case could implicate practices that are more widespread than anyone wants to admit. In some corners, there is fear that the legal process itself could become weaponized, turned into a stage for public narrative battles rather than truth-seeking. And yet there is also hope that this case might bring clarity, shine light on abuses of influence, and help create stronger protections for those who come forward. As the final days before the deposition unfold, the pressure on both sides continues to grow. Insiders close to Lively describe an atmosphere of quiet intensity. Her legal team has tightened communication, reviewed evidence, rehearsed testimony, and prepared for last-minute surprises. For Baldoni's side, the focus remains on containment, minimizing exposure, challenging her credibility, and preparing their own witnesses for potential follow-ups. This is not just about one deposition or one ruling, it is about laying the groundwork for the trial itself and possibly for a resolution before the courtroom phase even begins. The emotional toll is now undeniable. Both parties have seen their private lives dissected, their intentions questioned, and their reputations put on trial before a single verdict has been delivered. In this environment, trust erodes quickly, allies become liabilities, and the question of who to believe becomes less about facts and more about framing. What will happen after July 31st remains uncertain. If the deposition proceeds smoothly and no major revelations are leaked, the case may return to a quiet simmer until pretrial motions begin in early 2026. But if even one critical detail surfaces, one explosive claim or contradictory statement, it could send the entire case back into the headlines. and shift the balance of public sentiment again. For now, the industry waits with cautious breath. Legal observers draft their predictions, social media churns its theories, and the people at the center of it all prepare for a day that will define much more than just a case. It will define a legacy. It will reveal what happens when power meets resistance, when silence breaks, and when the courts of law and public opinion converge in the age of digital scrutiny, endless commentary, and the impossible pursuit of an uncontested truth. This video covers legal allegations in a news context. All claims are from official filings and no guilt is implied until proven in court. Please keep all discussions respectful. Allegations are not facts until proven in court.